Most people do not want real Stoicism. They want the image of it. They want the quotes, the posture, the aesthetic, the feeling of being serious. They want Marcus Aurelius in the caption. They want discipline in the bio. They want calm words over chaotic habits. But real Stoicism was never designed to make you look strong. It was designed to expose how weak you are before you become stronger. And that is exactly why so many people secretly reject it. Not openly. Publicly, they praise it. Privately, they avoid it. Because real Stoicism does not flatter the ego. It humiliates it. It strips away excuses. It takes every external thing you use to define yourself and asks a brutal question. If all of that disappeared tomorrow, who would you still be? Not your followers, not your status, not your productivity system, not your routines when life is easy. You, under pressure, in loss, in uncertainty, in pain, in boredom, in humiliation, in fear. That is where Stoicism begins. And that is why it is still one of the most dangerous philosophies a human being can encounter. Dangerous to illusion, dangerous to vanity, dangerous to self-deception, dangerous to every part of you that wants comfort more than truth. That is also why this philosophy is needed now more than ever. Because look at the world people are trying to survive in. Attention is being auctioned every second. Outrage is rewarded. Impulse is monetized. Weakness is normalized, if it is packaged attractively enough. People cannot sit in silence. They cannot hear criticism without collapsing into defensiveness. They cannot wait. They cannot focus. They cannot lose. They cannot be ignored. They cannot be uncomfortable for 10 minutes without reaching for a screen, a snack, a notification, a distraction, a little hit of relief. And then they wonder why they feel fragile. They wonder why they have no center, why anxiety rises, why emotional chaos follows them everywhere, why their mood changes with every comment, every message, every number, every piece of outside feedback. Here is why. Because a person who cannot govern their own judgments will be governed by everything around them. That is not a metaphor. That is a sentence. If your mind is not yours, your life will not be either. And this is where most modern conversations about Stoicism become weak. They reduce it to productivity, morning routines, cold showers, hustle aesthetics, performative indifference, a philosophy of looking unfazed while secretly being ruled by the exact same impulses the ancient Stoics warned about. Some people have turned it into emotional suppression, others into masculine branding, others into motivational wallpaper. But the original philosophy was far more powerful than that. It was not built to make people impressive. It was built to make them free. And freedom, in Stoic terms, has almost nothing to do with the modern fantasy of doing whatever you want. To the Stoics, the man who obeys every impulse is not free. He is a slave. The woman who cannot bear discomfort is not free. She is owned by comfort. The person who needs approval to feel stable is not free. They are living on borrowed identity. Stoicism does not ask whether you feel strong when life is smooth. It asks whether you remain sovereign when life turns against you. That is why people must listen to this. Because most people are losing battles they do not even know they are fighting. They think the problem is outside them. Bad economy, bad timing, bad luck, bad relationships, bad childhood, bad boss, bad politics, bad platform. Sometimes those things are real. Sometimes they are brutal. But Stoicism begins where excuses end. Not because suffering is fake, not because injustice does not exist, but because the question is never only what happened to you. The question is, what happens inside you because of it? That is where your life is decided. Not by the event alone, but by the judgment you attach to it. That is one of the most important and most misused ideas in philosophy. When Epictetus says that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them, he is not saying pain is imaginary. He is saying your interpretation is the doorway through which pain either becomes wisdom or poison. And most people never guard that doorway. They let every event storm straight into their mind, claim absolute authority, and turn their emotional life into chaos. Think about how dangerous that is in the modern world. A person insults you online and your peace is gone. Someone else succeeds and your self-worth starts shaking. A notification goes unanswered and your mind invents rejection. A bad week turns into an identity crisis. A setback becomes evidence that life is against you. A delay becomes proof that you are failing. A criticism becomes a wound to the self. And because you never examine the judgment, you live as if the first interpretation is always the truth. It is not. Often it is conditioning. Often it is vanity. Often it is fear wearing the mask of certainty. Stoicism is needed because it forces a pause between event and reaction. In that pause, a human being becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Because that is where you stop being programmable. The ancient Stoics understood something the digital world depends on you forgetting. The easiest person to control is the one who reacts automatically. Fast anger, fast fear, fast envy, fast craving, fast offense, fast validation seeking, fast despair. If you can be triggered on command, you can be managed on command. And that is exactly the environment most people now live inside. Platforms profit when you react before you reflect. News feeds profit when your fear outruns your reason. Advertising works when desire moves faster than judgment. Even social circles become manipulative when your need for approval is stronger than your loyalty to truth. Stoicism is needed because it rebuilds the one thing this environment keeps trying to destroy: inner command. Now, here is where the philosophy becomes even more powerful. Most people think Stoicism is a set of coping tools. It is not. It is a complete vision of reality and human life. That is why the original school did not separate ethics from logic and physics. Logic taught you how to think clearly. Physics taught you what kind of universe you live in. Ethics taught you how to live well inside that universe. Remove any one of those, and the whole structure weakens. This is exactly what modern self-help versions keep doing. They keep the convenient ethical fragments and throw away the harder architecture underneath. But Stoicism only becomes truly transformative when you understand that the ethics emerge from a deeper worldview. The Stoics did not believe the universe was random chaos. They believed it was rationally ordered. They used terms like logos to describe this organizing principle, and pneuma to describe the active force structuring the cosmos. To modern ears, those ideas can sound strange, but their practical implication is devastatingly relevant. The universe is not obligated to obey your preferences. Reality is structured as it is. Your task is not to whine that it is difficult. Your task is to perceive it clearly and align your character accordingly. That changes everything. Because once you accept that reality is not built around your comfort, you stop treating discomfort like an emergency. That alone makes you stronger than most people. The modern mind panics whenever life refuses to match expectation. The Stoic mind asks a different question. What is this demanding from my character right now? Do you see how different that is? One mind says, this should not be happening to me. The other says, now I get to see what I am made of. One mind collapses into complaint. The other turns reality into training. That is why Stoicism is powerful. It transforms adversity from insult into instruction. And it is not just for dramatic suffering. This matters in ordinary life even more, because most lives are not destroyed by one catastrophic event. They are eroded by daily weakness, small indulgences, small cowardices, small acts of self-betrayal, repeated until they become identity. The Stoics understood that character is not built in theory, it is built in repetition. How you speak when irritated, how you think when ignored, how you act when tired, how you respond when no one praises you, how you carry yourself when no one is watching. This is why Stoicism is so badly needed now. We live in a time where performance has replaced character. People curate the appearance of self-mastery, while privately being ruled by appetite, anxiety, envy, and distraction. They broadcast principles they do not practice. They quote strength because they do not possess it. That is not philosophy. That is decoration. Real Stoicism makes decoration impossible because it keeps asking the one question most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid. What is under your control right now? Not yesterday, not the economy, not the algorithm, not whether people understand you, not whether people admire you. Right now. What belongs to you? Your judgments, your choices, your effort, your words, your willingness to act justly, your ability to restrain impulse, your ability to tell yourself the truth. That is the Stoic battlefield. And once you understand that, you begin to see why this philosophy produces strength that looks almost supernatural to people who have never trained it. When chaos erupts, the Stoic does not become numb. They become precise. They do not deny emotion. They deny emotion the right to rule. They do not pretend nothing hurts. They refuse to let pain dictate principle. That is why Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional deadness. It is the opposite. It is emotional literacy with hierarchy. It says feelings are real, but they are not kings. Fear may appear, but it does not get to command the ship. Anger may arise, but it does not become law. Grief may come, but it does not erase duty. This matters because the modern world worships emotional immediacy. Feel it, say it. Feel it, post it. Feel it, identify with it. Feel it, obey it. Stoicism interrupts that entire chain. It asks whether the first movement of emotion deserves your consent. That is one of the most advanced and difficult ideas in the whole system. The Stoics knew impressions arrive automatically, but assent does not have to. Something appears frightening. Something appears insulting. Something appears unbearable. The untrained mind stamps it as truth and reacts. The Stoic mind examines it. Is it actually unbearable or merely unpleasant? Is it truly shameful or just inconvenient to my ego? Is it injustice or is it my vanity feeling denied? That examination is where civilization begins inside a person. This is why Stoicism is powerful enough to rebuild people who feel mentally scattered. It does not start with hacks, it starts with judgment. And judgment is where life becomes either slavery or freedom. Consider how many people today live under the tyranny of externals. Their peace depends on whether they are liked. Their confidence depends on whether they are noticed. Their drive depends on whether they feel inspired. Their mood depends on whether the day cooperates. Their identity depends on possessions, reputation, momentum, body image, status, romantic attention, endless little signals from outside. The Stoics looked at that and called it madness, not because externals do not matter at all, but because they cannot be the foundation of a good life. Wealth can vanish, health can fail, reputation can flip overnight, power can leave, beauty fades. Look at how revolutionary that is today. Most people have been taught to chase outcomes first and character second. Win, then become admirable. Get the status, then become confident. Get the body, then become disciplined. Get the money, then become calm. Stoicism reverses the order. Become the kind of person who can handle outcomes without being owned by them. Become the kind of person who can lose without disintegrating, win without becoming arrogant, suffer without becoming bitter, act without applause, wait without panic, and speak the truth without trembling for social approval. That is power. Not fake online power, not posturing, not rhetoric. Real power, the kind that cannot be taken from you by a bad year. This is also why the history of Stoicism matters. It did not emerge from comfort. It emerged in the middle of public life. In markets, in noise, in politics, in social friction. Zeno did not begin as a monk seeking serenity in perfect isolation. He began as a man broken by loss. A shipwreck took his cargo, his security, his old direction. Out of that collapse came the search that built a philosophy. There is something brutally relevant about that. Many people only become serious when life humiliates them, when something breaks, when their self-image cracks, when comfort fails. Stoicism was forged for exactly that threshold. It does not promise you a life without shipwreck. It teaches you how not to drown spiritually when one comes. Then came Chrysippus, whose intellectual labor gave the school structure and force. Then Seneca, navigating wealth, power, corruption, and danger in imperial Rome. Then Epictetus, born enslaved, who developed one of the most uncompromising visions of inner freedom ever articulated. Then Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by plague, war, betrayal, mortality, and political burden, writing private reminders to himself so he would not forget what mattered. Think about the range of those lives: merchant, slave, statesman, emperor. This is not an accidental detail. It proves the philosophy was never just for one class, one temperament, or one environment. It was built for the universal human problem. How do you remain upright in a world that refuses to bend around your wishes? That question is more urgent now than it was for many people then. Because modern people are not merely facing hardship, they are facing constant fragmentation. Their nervous systems are under siege, their attention is scattered, their values are outsourced. They are overstimulated and underdirected, full of information, empty of order. They have endless access to opinions and almost no training in judgment. This is exactly why Stoicism is not optional intellectual decoration anymore. It is survival equipment. Because if you do not train your mind deliberately, something else will train it for you. The crowd will, the feed will, the market will, your cravings will, your fears will, the loudest voice in your environment will. And then you will call that personality. You will call that identity. You will say, "This is just how I am." No. Much of it is what you have repeatedly obeyed. Stoicism is the refusal to remain unexamined conditioning. It is the refusal to let appetite masquerade as identity. It is the refusal to let your first impulse become your master. This is what makes it dangerous in a weak culture. A truly stoic person is hard to manipulate. They are hard to sell panic to, hard to bait into outrage, hard to control through flattery, hard to dominate through fear of exclusion, hard to break with discomfort, hard to seduce with cheap pleasure, hard to distract with noise. That kind of person is rare now, which is exactly why becoming one matters. But here is the part people really need to hear. Stoicism is not just powerful because it makes suffering easier. It is powerful because it gives meaning back to effort. The Stoics believe the world unfolds through cause and effect, through a rational order beyond individual preference. This creates the paradox that confuses many people. If reality is structured the way it is, why strive? Why resist temptation? Why train character? Their answer is what later thinkers would call compatibilism. But the deeper point is simpler. You do not control the whole chain of events. You control whether your own ruling faculty becomes noble or corrupted within it. Circumstances present the test. Character answers it. Fate may place the material in front of you, but your judgments shape the human being who meets it. That means effort always matters, not because it rewrites the cosmos, but because it writes you. That is why the Stoics cared so much about habit. Every response forms the responder. Every choice educates character. Every indulgence makes the next indulgence easier. Every act of restraint makes the next act of restraint more possible. The person you become is not separate from the decisions you repeat. This is why reading Stoic quotes without practicing Stoic discipline is worse than ignorance in some ways. It lets you admire what you are not becoming. It gives you the mood of seriousness without the cost of transformation. It lets you feel aligned with virtue while still obeying comfort. And that is one of the most dangerous forms of self-deception, because it feels noble while producing nothing. So why must people listen to this now? Because many are on a path that looks normal and ends in inner ruin. Not dramatic ruin, worse, soft ruin. A life of constant reactivity, constant distraction, constant dependence on externals, constant avoidance of discomfort, constant emotional bargaining with reality. They will still function, they will still post, they will still work, they will still smile when required, but they will not belong to themselves. And one day, they will feel it. In the middle of a quiet room, a hard conversation, a personal loss, a humiliating failure, a health scare, a betrayal, a season of uncertainty, they will discover they built a life without an inner citadel. And then panic arrives, because there is nowhere stable inside to stand. Stoicism builds that place. Slowly, unromantically, without spectacle. It tells you to watch your impressions, distinguish what is yours from what is not. Stop demanding that the world cooperate with your preferences. Stop making emotional drama out of unavoidable facts. Stop waiting to feel like doing what duty requires. Stop confusing comfort with good. Stop bargaining with discipline. Stop worshiping approval. Stop calling weakness authenticity. Stop calling indulgence self-care. Stop calling reactivity honesty. Stop calling avoidance peace. Tell the truth, govern yourself, practice justice, restrain appetite, endure what must be endured, use what happens. Do not kneel to it. That is not outdated. That is medicine. And the beautiful thing is that it is practical immediately. Today, not someday. The next time someone disrespects you, the philosophy begins. The next time you are ignored, it begins. The next time your phone pulls at your attention, it begins. The next time your ego wants to defend itself, it begins. The next time you want to complain about something outside your control, it begins. The next time you feel fear and still do what is right, it begins. Stoicism is not waiting in a monastery or hidden in a Latin phrase. It is right there, in the smallest decision between impulse and principle. That is why it is so hard, and that is why it is so powerful. If you practice it seriously, your life changes in a way most people can feel before they can explain. You become less available to chaos, less impressed by vanity, less seduced by noise, more able to work without applause, more able to suffer without melodrama, more able to listen without offense, more able to act without delay, more able to lose without collapse, more able to live in truth. That is not coldness. That is stability. That is not suppression. That is strength with structure. That is not passivity. That is disciplined participation in reality. So understand the brutal truth. This philosophy is not popular because it is easy. It is popular because people are starving for a way out of their own inner disorder. But many only flirt with it. They want the language, not the law, the appearance, not the practice, the confidence, not the correction. Real Stoicism demands that you stop rehearsing who you want to be and start becoming accountable to what you repeatedly are. It asks you to trade fantasy for discipline, self-pity for responsibility, emotional chaos for examined judgment, dependence for character. Most people will not do that. That is why most people will remain fragile, but you do not have to. You can decide that your mind will no longer be rented out to every passing event. You can decide that your peace will not depend on applause. You can decide that discomfort will become training instead of threat. You can decide that your values will be practiced, not performed. You can decide that the next insult, the next delay, the next frustration, the next fear, the next temptation will not simply reveal your conditioning, it will become an opportunity to rewrite it. That is the promise and the burden of Stoicism. Not that life stops being difficult, that difficulty stops owning you. If you're done admiring strength and ready to build it, subscribe to the Stoic Code, not for inspiration, for inner command. Now prove it. Comment, I will master my judgment, not as a phrase, as a vow. And if you know someone who talks about discipline, but still lives at the mercy of every impulse, send them this. They may resist it. Good. That probably means they need it most. Welcome to the Stoic Code.